Hello, my name is Oliver, and I would like to introduce a theory first created by French sociologist Roger Caillois. The theory/study of a man, play, and games, and how it applies in a short case study to Hidetaka Miyazaki and Yui Tanimura's 2022 game, Elden Ring. Roger Caillois, in his study of man, play, and games, characterizes the nature of play and how it is structured. Caillois bases many of his own theories off of those developed originally by Johann Huizinga in his book Homo Ludens, expanding the definition of what makes an activity a game. Caillois in his book defines a game as one which is free to play, which does not force a player onto itself, acting only as a joyous diversion, which is separate and not anchored to the real world, and can exist in its own limits of space, time, and setting, which is uncertain, where one can't form a definite on how the end result will look, allowing for someone to have input, one which is unproductive. Caillois argues that games do not produce goods or wealth or anything of physical trade. Games are governed by rules according to Caillois, meaning they are not entirely free form and require at least a surface level adherence to a form of law. Caillois also believes games are make-believe, meaning they are not set within our world with which we exist. On from this, and the main piece in which I will introduce to you today, is Caillois' 4 fundamental complexities of games: competition, chance, mimicry, and vertigo, and how they all fall under the structured or unstructured forms of play. Caillois, in his theory, has split play into 2 major categories, with which the 4 previously stated complexities fall within. Padilla, also known as unstructured play, is commonly associated with both mimicry and vertigo, whilst ludus, also known as structured play, falls in line with more competitive and patient-centric games which more commonly than not use competition and chance as core elements. Looking deeper into each category, starting with Padilla, reveals it as something not just attached solely to games, but instead a task which there is often no interaction between decision makers because there is nothing at stake. This informs us that Padilla is instead an activity which requires experimentation or expression without a rigid structure. In terms of the complexities which fit into this, mimicry is very common in this form of play, as detaching oneself from reality in order to disguise themselves in an illusion or a magic circle, as Johann Huizinga describes, is innately expressive. In theatre, this is also observed, with many actors detaching themselves from their personal lives and method acting, living a separate life in order to best express a different world. Vertigo, also referred to as ilinx by Caillois, primarily operates on a physiological level. It essentially involves inducing a playful sense of panic. Within Padilla, this concept often manifests in various cultural enjoyments, such as roller coasters, skiing, and other adrenaline-centric activities. According to Enrico Gadolfi, by removing standardized parameters of reference, vertigo enables us to once again detach from reality, allowing us to express and experiment. Ludus, or structured play, on the other hand, is far more restrained, calculating, and filled with contrivances. Being innately more structured, it tends to foster play which is more strategic. Naturally, this lends this category towards the complexities of competitive and chance-centric games. Agon, also known as competitive forms of play, are generally skill-centric games, focusing on speed, endurance, and ingenuity. Caillois argues that the spirit of Aegon is found even in other cultural phenomenon conforming to the game code, in duels, in tournaments, and in certain constant and noteworthy aspects of so-called courtly war, displaying its prominence even in history. This competitiveness bleeds into even modern games, such as board games like chess, or strategy games like Age of Empires. Alia, or chance games, are the opposite of competitive games. They break down the natural differences between people and leave much of the play to chance. These activities are uniquely human, in fact, and are not found in the animal kingdom. Many games of chance are also structured ludus-type games, such as lottery games, or even games of gamble, such as poker or roulette. Despite me placing each of the complexities into a category, in reality they all share both Padilla and ludus traits, although discussing that would be delving into the theory of symmetry and dissymmetry by Caillois. Looking at Caillois' ideas through the lens of Elden Ring, we can assert that games do indeed fit all the complexities, with certain genres such as action RPGs like Elden Ring finding themselves sitting in the realm of 2 major complexities and 2 secondary complexities. Although we will begin our look at Elden Ring with determining if it is indeed a game according to Caillois' theory. The game does not force us to play it, and therefore is free to play. It is, although inspired by real life, sitting within its own separate world and setting of fantasy. It has an ultimate goal of winning, and the method to get there, although is uncertain, and the enemies you face along the way are very similar. It does not produce any monetary value for its general player base, although certain individuals have garnered entire fan bases from discussing and analysing the themes and story of this game. It is, although expressly a video game, and therefore has very, very focused rules, with very few ways to break the game, as all options are intended and programmed by the developers unless it is a bug. It is wholly, though, make-believe, with this world being written by acclaimed fiction writer George R.R. Martin. Therefore, we can identify this as a game, according to Caillois' expanded definition. In terms of how it fits the 4 complexities, I have organised our understanding into major complexities, which are most prominent in the game, and secondary complexities, which are still present but not the focus of the developers. Our first major complexity is that of mimicry. Elden Ring perfectly fits within Caillois' idea of what mimicry in games is. The game treats you not as a player, but as a mere tarnished, who must make their way through many bosses in order to warrant themselves a crown. Mark Hines, in his study Bosses, Fantasy and Democracy, draws a comparison to how Elden Ring allows players to take out frustrations from real life in a mimic of their world, saying, through role-playing, violent interactions with unjust rulers, players of speculative games can assuage or even ignore fears of participating in corrupt systems. Our second major complexity is that of competition. Elden Ring is innately and wholly competitive, although it's generally players versus the world instead of player versus player. This competition is inherent in all the game's systems, allowing players to build up their character to best maximize damage, health, or resistances in order to overcome their foes and declare themselves the ultimate victor. Our secondary complexities are those of chance and vertigo. Although Elden Ring takes into account the randomness of enemies, such as giving them moves to pick from using a flowchart, these can still be learnt and adapted to, allowing players to improve their skills. Elden Ring's take on vertigo is very traditional in Caillois' eyes, whilst also being somewhat unique. As the game is aforementioned a video game, you cannot break its rules and nor can it. Elden Ring, in terms of vertigo, tends to mix in unique circumstances in order to induce panic in its players, most of the time placing them under increasing stress from difficult boss moves or strange world effects. In conclusion, Caillois' theory of man, play, and games sums up what makes a game and not some other task. It must be free, fantastical, random, unproductive, have rules, and be make-believe. Additionally, Caillois' theory describes what intricately makes up a game in his 4 complexities. In my case here, I have shown you how these 4 complexities relate to the 2022 game Elden Ring. I hope you have enjoyed this video and continue to watch more of mine in future. Bye!